told you, I don't hunt.
Maybe this will help.
There are some things out there I don't understand and probably never fully will. I may have gotten more used to it over the years and don't have any issues with it, yet I do not get furrydom, you know? All the ones I've met over the years were really lovely people. I appreciate both the effort and also passion that goes into the fandom at times, and honestly, who wouldn't want to sometimes take on a different persona from their usual self and spend the day in someone else's skin? Back in middle school, I was really into Warriors, as in the book series, not like the basketball team or something, and I remember also logging onto their web forums, checking with other cat friends, and just having a great time. But just like I grew out of any fandom over the years, that passion probably only lasted until the wait for the eventual movie adaptation got too long for me. And guess what? It was never released. As you could have guessed by now, I was therefore also more of a cat guy, and quote-unquote dog media like 101 Dalmatians, Beverly Hills Chihuahua, and Lily and the Tramp didn't really interest me. Sure, there were exceptions, but I would still choose a good Garfield strip over all the Snoopies in the world. It was also around that time, however, that another movie sure to eventually get as big and beloved as Warriors would step onto the scene, which is a little known flick called Alpha and Omega, which I didn't watch back then for that same reason of me not liking dogs, or in this case wolves. But there has not been a single movie series so far that has been as requested for me to talk about than freaking Alpha and Omega. A film I at first assumed to be nothing more than furry bait and symbiotic with the entire fandom, but oh, how wrong I was. While it is obvious that there are some furry-y vibes exuding from the poster already, what with the flowing locks and attention to detail, the general consent on this movie seems to be a fairly negative one, with many critics from way back criticizing it for an awful screenplay, pandering characters, poor visuals, and overall feeling of uninspiredness. But the same was said about Space Jam, and I doubt anyone nowadays would have anything negative to say about that cinematic marvel. So as I have no idea what to even expect with this one, what do you say we just leave all that to the side for now and try to decide together if Alpha and Omega is worth our collective time? Since apparently that is what you wanted. You're welcome. The film starts off, as all the greatest stories of our time do, with a couple of our main characters on the verge of falling off a cliff. It luckily also does a lot of the talking for me, as there's no more than 5 seconds wasted on establishing the relationship of our two main characters, who just jump into the air and start hugging each other. Subtlety is something you should strike from your mental vocabulary before jumping into this one. Except for the fact that, strangely enough, it's not actually the alphas that are grey, but the omegas, which is just an odd choice in my opinion. I know this is just nitpicking right off the bat, but going into this, it really took some getting used to that choice of color at first. Don't get me wrong, the CG isn't too bad overall, but that just really seems like a no-brainer to me. Then again, this is the same movie that willfully chooses to rely on this outdated alpha, beta, omega, delta cast system in the first place, so maybe I should just set my expectations a bit lower this time around. Essentially, the Omega Wolf of the story Humphrey tries his best to get his moves on with the Alpha Kate, which in spite of what that ridiculous opening may lead you to believe, are not actually lovers but just really good friends, which the parents however don't at all approve of. Her dad wants her to start a relationship with an Eastern wolf named Garth in order for the two packs to reunite and end their ongoing feud. So during the so-called Moonlight Howl, she meets up with Garth to try and live up to their family's name, while Humphrey stays back with Kate's friend Lily. But a less than impressive howl is apparently enough for Kate to immediately lose interest in Garth and go away. Maybe he should have eaten more lasagna. But while Lily and Garth slowly start developing feelings of their own for one another, Humphrey and Kate are being shot with tranquilizer darts and carried off to Sawtooth National Park in Idaho to, well, repopulate. This is also where they meet the British duck Paddy and his golf partner Marcel, a French-Canadian goose. The last part seems to be important since they're repeated about 45 times throughout the film.
This is not a lie if you're French.
Well, French-Canadian.
French-Canadian.
You want to face the French? That's French-Canadian!
French-Canadian, sir.
Whoops! Seems I left my pants off. After a bit of convincing on Kate and Humphrey's part, the Golfers agree to helping them get back home. What? You thought this was a story about how you shouldn't judge others based on their societal stance and that true love can persevere no matter where you're from? No, it's a road trip story. We don't get held up here for too long since they need to escape from the truck as soon as possible, but even when they actually find themselves on the verge of death for the second time in this film, the stakes don't seem to be very high since Humphrey was never to be taken all that seriously before. He's voiced by Justin Long, the voice of Alvin from the live-action Alvin and the Chipmunks films and a bunch of other stuff I haven't heard about. While yes, technically anyone could take on the role of Elvin with a pack of balloons and a total lack of self-respect, it's hard to picture him in a serious scenario with a character that just so happens to have also been entirely disrespectful to everyone around him a few minutes before. But anyway, miraculously they also catch up with their feathery friends the next day and head off to continue their journey through the admittedly pretty convincing snow-covered mountaintops, where, after being on the verge of death for the third time now, they go snowboarding with a grizzly and land right on the nearest train to take them back home. This actually is a legitimately great scene for once, where the two couples start howling at the moon. It not only leaves you feeling satisfied with the way these two relationships were set up, but also gives some nice eye candy for those like me who are into scenic shots of the moon at night. Despite how coincidental everything that came before it was, this one made me feel as though they were at least trying to make the film somewhat visually appealing, and I can respect that. Especially how for once you can actually feel the emotions going through their heads just by looking at them. As they approach the end of their journey, Kate notices the two tribes already having begun war and storms off to finally fulfill her destiny and marry Garth. With Lily angry at her and Humphrey heartbroken, that means it's time for a tacked on finale, where all of them admit to each other that they aren't actually meant to be for one another and rather stay with the one they love. I think it has gotten pretty obvious throughout the duration of this video what my thoughts on Alpha and Omega are. The plot is as generic as it gets. It's something like a road trip story mixed with some Homeward Bound but with wolves, and most of the characters likely won't make any lasting impact on you. Sure, there were exceptions like the rather reserved and clumsy Lily, who got a few laughs out of me, and the two golfers also weren't too annoying, but for how much creative freedom they would have with an environment that would allow for literally any kind of animal to instead only focus on the either completely prejudiced parents wolves or the annoying kids just seems counterproductive. Sometimes I even had a hard time distinguishing between the characters, especially the elders, not just because of their designs, but also due to how similar they behaved. While there was technically an end goal they were working toward with that impending famine, the tension was always kept to a bare minimum, and honestly, I couldn't have cared less about what happened to these characters. And while I know there are dozens upon dozens of other people ripping it to shreds already, I gotta say, for how rough around the edges and sometimes pretty difficult to sift through it was, there are aspects to it which I could understand kids being into had they grown up with it back then. It managed to garner a dedicated fanbase over the years, with the DVD being in circulation anywhere I go. For as much as I may like to riff on it, I'm also clearly not the target demographic, so if you were into this film back then, that's great. I can completely see where you're coming from, but I'm still personally glad I don't have to ever go back to this franchise, seeing as how despite the dedicated fanbase, it wasn't popular enough to warrant any No, please don't make... Imagine the first film, but there's more dogs. It's also Christmas. And the animation is about twice as bad. It's not terrible per se, it's a lot less harsh than the jump to most Disney direct-to-DVD sequels, but you can tell just how low the budget was on this one compared to the first film. Like, what is wrong with his eyes here? That's terrifying. Whew, there you have it. Now I can actually finish this bit. God damn it. Stop introducing all these new characters. I didn't care for their kids in the first film, and I don't care about either of them falling in love. These close-ups just freak me out, because while the animation on the second film was still kinda tolerable, this one just makes me wonder how this got a DVD release even. Hey, even the sky doesn't want to stay in this one. As a fan of basically any Halloween special, this one was really insulting to watch. The tension was so fabricated it would barely be believable for kids. There was this weird family drama plot point that only got introduced in the last third and didn't leave any lasting impact. But by far the worst aspect of this one okay, it doesn't even let me talk, sure. It's kinda hard to hate on this one because you can so easily tell the budget they had here was minimal at best. Scenes from the first film serve as flashbacks and take up about 40% of the film. They reused the villains from said prequel, and most of the characters we came to know from the previous ones don't even appear here. Oh, did I ever mention all these sequels don't feature the original voice actors? Big shocker, I know. Hey, remember that regular national park all these characters grew up in that had no sign of there being anything out of the ordinary? There's dinos now. How many more of these are there? Okay, so for as much as I hated on all the other sequels, this one was actually the least insufferable so far. This is the second one set during the winter season, and while it doesn't have anything to do with the holidays, actually makes use of its environment and gets a better feeling of tension across than even the first film. Sure, that may not be that high a bar anyway, and their kids are as much a pain in the neck as ever, but this was the first one where I didn't feel the need to constantly check my Twitter feed while watching. It's also the first to openly admit it includes furries. Heh, get it? Come on, that's clever. Well, I liked it anyways. Whew, suddenly I'm excited. Maybe we should check out the last one too. It only came out 2 years ago and will likely be the conclusion to this entire franchise, so I'm sure they'd go out with a Alpha and Omega Journey to the Bear Kingdom is one of the worst movies I've ever watched. Aside from the more than annoying characters being amped up to the absolute extreme and supported by new ones that serve absolutely no purpose to the plot, they also take up the entirety of the film, leaving no room for the ones we know of to even get to do anything. And it is baffling in a sense that this franchise has kept on for so long without any progression to be seen from any of its characters. Think about it, 8 of these movies have passed and I can't even tell most of the bears apart, so obviously the next logical step is to make an entire movie about them.
He's rapping?
No, he's not! That's just the beat! How is that rap? In conclusion, Alpha and Omega is a franchise that really didn't need to go on for this long. It was fine when the first film came out, first and second sequel, sure. Part 4 through 8, however, is where I draw the line. Not just one line, several lines, all the lines everywhere. It's not all bad though. There were some decent songs here and there, the animation wasn't completely abysmal for some of them, and they got freaking Debbie Mariah Carey Derryberry as one of the pups. I do still hope, however, this actually will have been the last we ever see of Alpha and Omega. To all the furries I may have offended in the past by calling this the ultimate furry franchise, I just want to send out my sincerest apologies. These are not words I wish to have written down on my tombstone, so why don't we just call it a day and never talk about these movies again. Until Saber Spark brings them up again in like 4 months.
Wait, what?